The date was probably September 18th, 2019, or one before or after. I was sitting, browsing through Twitter, just minding my own business as best as I'm capable of, when suddenly, out of nowhere, my timeline was pummeled with opinions. A typical Wednesday to be sure, but this time it was much more concentrated, as if a formerly niche community had fanned out across the web and began parroting its messages to the remaining populace from no one source. The whole online world had seemingly shifted its gaze towards one subject, like seeing the planets align. Truly, the cosmic implications for a Twitter equivalent would be far greater. The catalyst was an animation, one that at that point was in fact unreleased. Fascinating. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Watching thousands combat against one another in perfect harmonic synchronization over the moral dilemmas presented in a piece of media that had not even seen the light of day. Conceived by Vivian Medrano, and out of passion, this animation would become known as Hazbin Hotel. When it did release, the YouTube landscape flooded with an almost literal wave of reactions, varying so greatly that it could act as a sample size for humanity's entire emotional spectrum. Scalding ridicule and godly praise. Constructive criticism and blind admiration. Love and hate. Two ends of a line. Two planetary poles. Two sides to an hourglass with the sand coursing down, funneling itself into a single focal point that is this animation's 31-minute and 45-second runtime before passing out the other side. Each of us being a single particle, all contained within the walls of the hourglass. Our individual positions are relative, except for that singular point in the middle, through which we all must pass on each of our uniquely chaotic life journeys. With Hazbin Hotel being the singular fixed point in our philosophical travels that seemingly all humanity is universally bound to experience. So experience we shall. When I sat down to watch it, I can remember my chair squeaked slightly, almost as if the universe was giving me a courteous warning of the spiritual intensity I was unknowingly about to engage in. For to approach Hazbin Hotel as it is, the cosmological center of our and maybe other realities, is too much for the unenlightened to pursue. Fortunately, I'd brought a glass of water that day. It starts with a cutout, stylized to mimic paper, as it shows a human-like figure descending uncontrollably. Of course, symbolizing one's journey through life, and yes, death, and being a victim to one's own surroundings. Subject to happenstance, coincidence, and luck. All while recognizing how little control you really do have, and that the only truly autonomous decision one has is how they internalize these circumstances. Some embrace good, some embrace bad, and some embrace insanity. And it was then that I realized that this animation's premise ties in specifically with life and death, heaven and hell, and one's descent from grace into eternal damnation. But more uniquely, the potential for a journey in the opposite direction. Much like the aforementioned hourglass. Two halves, an up and a down, with seemingly only one direction one can take as the innocent become corrupted with time. All until someone, utilizing their limited but still necessary free will, decides to flip the hourglass and allow for the opposite to come to fruition. As the seemingly irreparable corruption within those who have already made the descent down is lessened, allowing for a steady upward rise. No, a reverse descent. A reverse descent into betterment. And that is exactly what this show tackles, through Charlie, the protagonist and metaphorical hourglass flipper within the confines of this fictional sub-universe within our own. She creates a hotel intended as a moral rehabilitation center for demons, since the story is set in hell, represented through a hyperbolic cityscape with residents so densely populated on a societal-wide scale that a yearly mass extermination has become necessary to retain economic stability. Again, much like the hourglass, the tightly compact sand particles, piling up and suffocating out one another until actions must be taken to expunge as many particles as possible, all with the inevitability of the cycle repeating itself after a standardized segment of time. Charlie's Hotel was conceived in direct response to this, as a positive yet similar solution to the same problems these annual mass exterminations hope to solve. Alleviating the population buildup by means of redemption, but likely as an homage to the many struggles faced by history's greatest and often unsung innovators. Charlie's idea is mocked by her peers in a failing advertising effort when she makes an appearance on 666 News to pitch her idea to the masses. And it was during this scene that came the moment that many seem to have the most contention with, wherein one of the newscasters turns down Charlie's handshake saying, "I don't touch the gays." Now, even as the least perceptive viewers will probably have noticed, Hazbin Hotel is aimed towards an adult crowd, and is set in hell, so this remark fits both thematically and contextually. So surely this couldn't have been the true source of outrage within the animation itself, right? Well, on a surface level, maybe, but when taking into account the metaphysical significance of the animation, it may be possible to pull back a different solution. If we make the not-so-unlikely assumption that Hazbin Hotel is the center juncture point of sentient life in the universe, and the widespread diversity of thought within it, there's a high likelihood that, like with life itself, Hazbin Hotel affects its watchers in a variety of different ways. Some will be inspired, joyful, heightened, while others may lash out against it, seeking out flaws in the animation itself as a means of venting their directionless anger. And to the simple-minded, this may be just. Logical even. For criticism has such a profound effect on the betterment of the world, and Hazbin Hotel is certainly not free of error. But what this animation is irrelevant. One could place a boulder in the middle of a busy highway and block out traffic, but the small or even large physical attributes of the boulder don't change its effect on those around it. It's still blocking the highway either way. I do believe, of course, that if Hazbin Hotel had been nothing but a 10-minute black screen, its cosmological placement would remain unchanged. As stated, a singular fixed point in an ever-changing universe. But even if this were the case, its polarizing reaction would remain the same due to the complexity of the human psyche. For even things that are considered universally good or unequivocally bad will find a portion of humanity who views them as the opposite given enough exposure. The near unlimited range of human perception allows for individuals to find different meaning within the exact same thing. Like a Rorschach test, Hazbin Hotel offers us a reflection into ourselves and offers an outlet for our deep-seated emotions, whatever they may be. What is forever changing, but fixed? The answer? A mirror. This animation may remain unchanged on a sheerly literal level for every viewing, no matter who's seeing it, but because of its significance to our universe, it teases out individualistic reactions. It allows us to be self-reflective. And what is also reflective? The sides of an hourglass. And since Hazbin Hotel acts as the center point for this hourglass, it is the only section that does not change position even when the hourglass is flipped. It simply rotates, fixed, yet unchanging. These parallels are simply too great to ignore, and maybe the creator, VisiPop, knows this. It would explain why the animation has such symbolic ties to this phenomenon, and why it's an animation at all. If whatever VisiPop chose to upload on her channel at that given day was always destined to become what it is now, then why not have it be a pilot to a show in order to help establish a viewer base? Much like Charlie in Hazbin Hotel itself when approaching 666 News. And if this were true, it may also explain why Hazbin Hotel itself suffers from an ailment I've coined magnum opus syndrome, which occurs when a person knowingly orchestrates a project intended to be their greatest masterpiece, or when pressured to make it such when stakes are imposed. Hazbin Hotel has a breakneck pace throughout, which makes it apparent that the team did its best to fill every second with as much detail as possible. The problem occurs when this becomes sensory overload. A good example is with the comedic sound effects. The reason these kind of jokes work in animated media is because they're unexpected when they occur, which can be funny. In Hazbin Hotel, they attempt to pull this off, but they do so too many times, which waters them all down. Sometimes less is more. And this could explain why a spin-off pilot released a month later on the same channel called Hell of a Boss has so much better pacing. It wasn't the result of the team trying to cram as many jokes and detail into a single video. It felt like it had room to breathe. And the same cannot be said for Hazbin Hotel, although this may also be attributed to the editing equivalent of time dilation. You see, the average viewer who watches the episode once experiences it much faster than those who made it. As a creator in an inherently slow-to-produce artistic medium like animation, and spending hours on every single second of footage, it's easy to inadvertently try to speed up the pacing of the work to compensate for how slow you see it as in your own viewing experience. It's a mistake I myself have made in the past with my own videos, and it's possible that this may have been the case with Hazbin Hotel. It's impossible for any artist to view their own work objectively, and after having their perception altered by the creation process, they tried to pack more into the episode and inadvertently gave it one of its biggest flaws. Personally, I think Hazbin Hotel is exceptional in some regards, but horrible in others for the aforementioned reasons. Discounting these, however, it still has an interesting premise, incredible character design, and decent animation. Choppy in some areas and not without its own more specific flaws, but decent animation regardless. But, to qualify the end result into a single rating, I'd say it lies somewhere between a 5 and a 6 out of 10. With the only barricade preventing it from achieving anything higher would be the creators themselves. And ironically, because they're trying to make it as good as they can. Trying too hard. But honestly, there is a great show in here somewhere. It's as if it's trapped, buried, ever so slightly beneath the ground, bellowing out fruitlessly to deaf ears of careless souls trying to get out. Choked cries are lost to the mound of sand that encapsulates them, and maybe that's the way it will always be. At least until someone flips the hourglass and the cycle repeats itself again and again for all eternity. We are never truly free. Our lives are just a collection of moments, some taking place just before we're buried completely and others while we're drowning in it. Through free will, we're able to break out by flipping it around, but are forced to count the days until we need to do it again. And by the end of it, we're all still trapped in the same hourglass, drowning each other out for all eternity. So long story short, Hazbin Hotel is decent, but not the greatest thing in the world, and the controversy behind it is pretty stupid. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Love it. Keep doing it. Keep it up. Keep it up, bro. You're the best.
Oj, det var nästa år när man kan around and say, here, sit here, we could say, hormone dinner strokes and get cat, they'll feel so great, fine, and so great, they'll feel so you built Mr. Snake, snowball, excitement, so you have Mr. Snake, you don't know,